Nandana Vraja Janari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Hari Nam Mahamantra ki jai. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyo cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtaprayeshvavadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. We are going to read the translations of verses 24 through 39, but the verse that we are going to focus today is verse number 36 of chapter 14, 9th canto. 9, 14, 24 to 39. We'll read the translations. We can do that together. We can read the translations together in chorus, and then we'll get a little bit of a context of where we are in the Bhagavatam, and then we'll dive into this particular verse. Okay? Is that good? Okay. So we have it on the board. 24? Okay, perfect. All right. Together. 1, 2, 3. Shukadeva Goswami continued. The best of human beings, Pururava, began freely enjoying the company of Urvashi, who engaged in sexual activities with him in many celestial places, such as Chaitra-ratha and Nandanakanan, where the demigods enjoy. Urvashi's body was as fragrant as the saffron of a lotus. Being enlivened by the fragrance of her face and body, Pururava enjoyed her company for many days with great jubilation. Not seeing Urvashi in his assembly, the king of heaven, Lord Indra, said, "Without Urvashi, my assembly is no longer beautiful." Considering this, he requested the Gandharvas to bring her back to his heavenly planet. Thus the Gandharvas came to earth, and at midnight, when everything was dark, they appeared in the house of Pururava and stole the 2 lambs entrusted to the king by his wife Urvashi. Urvashi treated the 2 lambs like her own sons. Therefore, when they were being taken by the Gandharvas and began crying, Urvashi heard them and rebuked her husband. "Now I am being killed," she said, under the protection of an unworthy husband who is a coward and a eunuch, although he thinks himself a great hero. "Because I depended on him, the plunderers have deprived me of my 2 sons, the lambs, and therefore I am now lost. My husband lies down at night in fear, exactly like a woman, although he appears to be a man during the day." Pururava, stricken by the sharp words of Urvashi, like an elephant struck by its driver's pointed roar, became very angry. Not even dressing himself properly, he took a sword in hand and went out naked into the night to follow the Gandharvas who had stolen the lambs. After giving up the 2 lambs, the Gandharvas shone brightly like lightning, thus illuminating the house of Pururava. Urvashi then saw her husband returning with the lambs in hand, but he was naked, and therefore she left. No longer seeing Urvashi on his bed, Pururava was most aggrieved. Because of his great attraction for her, he was very much disturbed. Thus, lamenting, he began traveling about the earth like a madman. Once during his travels all over the world, Pururava saw Urvashi, accompanied by 5 companions, on the bank of the Saraswati at Kurukshetra. With jubilation in his face, he then spoke to her in sweet words as follows: "O my dear wife, O most cruel one, kindly stay, kindly stay. I know that I have never made you happy until now, but you should not give me up for that reason. This is not proper for you. Even if you have decided to give up my company, let us nonetheless talk for some time. O goddess, now that you have refused me, my beautiful body will fall down here, and because it is unsuitable for your pleasure, it will be eaten by foxes and vultures." Urvashi said, "My dear king, you are a man, a hero. Don't be impatient and give up your life. Be sober and don't allow the senses to overcome you like foxes. Don't let the foxes eat you. In other words, you should not be controlled by your senses. Rather, you should know that the heart of a woman is like that of a fox. There is no use making friendship with women." Our women as a class are merciless and cunning. They cannot tolerate even a slight offense. For their own pleasure, they can do anything irreligious, and therefore they do not fear killing even a faithful husband or brother. Women are very easily seduced by men. Therefore, polluted women give up the friendship of a man who is their well-wisher and establish false friendship among fools. Indeed, they seek newer and newer friends, one after another. O my dear king, you will be able to enjoy with me as my husband at the end of every year for one night only. In this way, you will have other children, one after another. Okay, we'll stop, pause there, and we'll chant this verse. Urvashuvacha Mamritha Purushosi Tvam Masmadvadyurvraka ime Vapi sakhyam na vaistrinam Vrkanam hridayam yatha Urvashuvacha Mamritha Purushosi Tvam Masmadvadyurvraka ime Kvapi sakhyam na vaistrinam Vrkanam hridayam yatha Urvashuvacha Mamrita Purushosi Tvam. Well, we can do your usual thing, whatever you do normally. Yeah, go for it. That's the verse. You're not able to see? The second line. That one, yes, the English one. Take your time, no rush. Don't be shy. Okay. Masmatvadyurka ime.
Kvapi swakyam na vaistrinam.
Kvapi sakyam na vaistrinam.
Vakranam pradyalyam yatha.
Vrikanam hridayam yatha.
Urvashi uvacha.
Urvashi uvacha.
Mamrita purushosi tvam.
Mamrita purushosi tvam.
Masmat vaidurvikta ime.
Masmatvadyurka ime.
Kvapi sakyam na vaistrinam.
Kvapi sakyam na vaistrinam.
Vikram vadyam yatha.
Vrikanam hridayam yatha.
Urvashi uvacha.
Urvashi uvacha.
Mamrita purushosi tvam.
Mamrita purushosi tvam. Masmatvadyurka ime.
Kvapi sakyam na vaistrinam.
Kvapi sakyam na vaistrinam. Na vaistrinam. Na vaistrinam.
Vrikanam hridayam yatha.
Vrikanam hridayam yatha.
Urvashi uvacha.
Urvashi uvacha.
Amritaha purushosi tvam.
Mamrita purushosi tvam.
Masmatvadyurka ime.
Masmatvadyurka ime. Kvapi sakyam na vaistrinam.
Vikanam hridayam yatha.
Vrikanam hridayam yatha. Urvashi uvacha. Mamrita purushosi tvam.
Masmatvadyurka ime.
Masmatvadyurka ime.
Kvapi sakyam na vaistrinam.
Kvapi sakyam na vaistrinam. Vrikanam hridayam yatha.
Urvashi uvacha.
Urvashi uvacha.
Mamrita purushosi tvam.
Mamrita purushosi tvam.
Masmat vaidurvikta ime.
Masmatvadyurka ime.
Kvapi sakyam na vaistrinam.
Kvapi sakyam na vaistrinam.
Vikanam hridayam yatha.
Vrikanam hridayam yatha. Jai. Okay? You want to say the full verse, Prabhu?
In Sanskrit?
Yeah, Sanskrit.
Urvashi uvacha.
Urvashi uvacha.
Mamrita purushosi tvam.
Mamrita purushosi tvam.
Masmatvadyurvikta ime.
Masmatvadyurka ime.
Kvapi sakyam na vaistrinam.
Kvapi sakyam na vaistrinam.
Vikanam hridayam yatha.
Vrikanam hridayam yatha. The word by word translations. Urvashi uvacha. Urvashi said. Ma, do not. Mritha, give up your life. Purushaha, male. Asi, are. Tvam, you. Masma, do not allow it. Tva, unto you. Adyuhu, may eat. Vrika, the foxes. Ime, these senses. Do not be under the control of your senses. Kwa api, anywhere. Sakyam, friendship. Na, not. Vai, indeed. Strinam, of women. Vrikanam, of the foxes. Hridayam, the heart. Yatha, as. Translation by and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. Urvashi said, my dear king, you're a man, a hero. Don't be impatient and give up your life. Be sober and don't allow the senses to overcome you like foxes. Don't let the foxes eat you. In other words, you should not be controlled by your senses. Rather, you should know that the heart of a woman is like that of a fox. There is no use making friendship with women. Please repeat the translation. Urvashi said, my dear king, you're a man, a hero. Don't be impatient and give up your life. Be sober and don't allow the senses to overcome you like foxes. Don't let the foxes eat you. In other words, you should not be controlled by your senses. Rather, you should know that the heart of a woman is like that of a fox. There is no use making friendship with women. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Chanakya Pandit has advised, Vishwaso naiva kartavya strishu raja kuleshu cha. Never place your faith in a woman or a politician. Unless elevated to spiritual consciousness, everyone is conditioned and fallen. What to speak of women who are less intelligent than men. Women have been compared to Shudras and Vaishyas, Striyo Vaishyas tata Shudra. On the spiritual platform, however, when one is elevated to the platform of Krishna consciousness, whether one is a man, woman, Shudra or whatever, everyone is equal. Otherwise, Urvashi, who was a woman herself and who knew the nature of women, said that a woman's heart is like that of a sly fox. If a man cannot control his senses, please note, if a man cannot control his senses, he becomes a victim of such sly foxes. But if one can control the senses, there is no chance of his being victimized by sly fox-like women. Chanakya Pandit has also advised that if one has a wife like a sly fox, he must immediately give up his life at home and go to the forest. Mata yasya grihe nasti bharya cha priyavadini aranyam tena gantavyam yatharanyam datha graham. Chanakya Shloka 57. Krishna conscious grihasthas must be very careful of the sly fox woman. If a wife at home is obedient and follows her husband in Krishna consciousness, the home is welcome. Otherwise, one should give up one's home and go to the forest. Hitvatmapatam grihamandha kupam vanam gato yadharimashrayeta. Bhagavatam 755. One should go to the forest and take shelter of the lotus feet of Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Om Adhyanatimiraandhasya Dhyananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances to the lotus feet of my spiritual master. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sude Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so we are in a very sensitive and delicate part of the Srimad Bhagavatam, rife for the production of tremendous misunderstandings and all sorts of interesting, unnecessary conversations, etc. But this is an important part of the Bhagavatam because it tells us something very important. It's very subtle. There are a lot of little subtle things here, okay? So first of all, let's look at the context. What's happening here? At the beginning of this chapter, Soma, the moon god, who is an ancestor of Sri Krishna himself, mind you, has become so captivated by the wife of Brihaspati, the guru of the demigods, that he stole her. He kidnapped her forcibly, took her away, and did all sorts of things with her. And there was a war between the demigods, between Soma and, Brihaspati was their guru. So the demigods were like, what are you doing here? Return his wife right away. And as it happens in modern political life also, the enemy of the enemy becomes your friend. So the demons got involved. Shukracharya, the acharya of the demons, got involved in this whole thing. and he said that the demon should support Soma. So he wanted to create a split between the demigods, right? And then there was a war, and this was, going to great lengths. When finally the demigods approached Lord Brahma and said, "This is the nonsense that's going on here, and please can you intervene?" He went to a higher authority, and Brahma came there. He yelled at Soma and took away Tara, the wife of Brihaspati, and brought her back to her husband Brihaspati, and there was peace again, right? Everything was fine. But at that moment, Brihaspati realized that she was pregnant. So now he wanted to know whose child she's carrying. So she was shy because crazy things had happened, and she didn't want to openly say that. And then she did not say anything, and the child was born, and the child was very effulgent like the moon, but she didn't disclose whose child it was. Then Brahma took her to the side, grandfatherly personality, says, "Whose child is this, my girl?" And then she said, "Actually, it's the moon god's son, Soma's son." So then Soma took over that child, and that child then became a very handsome young man and married, had another child by another Apsara named Ila, and then that son was Pururava. Okay? So now we have to observe that the actions, the consciousness of a child, first of all, is determined by the consciousness of the parents. The consciousness of Soma was not very clean at the time of conception of the father of Pururava. So this continued. And so therefore Pururava was not sense controlled. Let's put it that way. Okay. So you have to note that such a thing happened in the Satya Yuga. This was the Satya Yuga. In the end of the chapter, when you look at the last few verses of the Satya Yuga, you will see the specific verse here. Verse text number 48, Prabhu, if you want to let everybody see it. In the Satya Yuga, in the first millennium, all the Vedic mantras were included in one mantra, the Pranava. There was only one mantra. Om. That's all you had to chant. Right? All the other mantras are not necessary. The root of all Vedic mantras. In other words, the Atharva Veda alone was the source of all Vedic knowledge. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, was the only worshipable deity. There was no recommendation of worship of the demigods. Fire was one only, and the only order of the life in the human society was known as Hamsa. In other words, there was no distinction. Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra was not there. Satya Yuga, I suppose, we see that as a golden age. But even in the golden age, this happened. Why? Because ultimately this is the material world, not the spiritual world. Material world is Dukkhalayam Ashashvatam. Ashashvatam means temporary. Ashashvatam also means liar, being a liar. Shashvat means to be true, and Ashashvat means to be lying, to be dishonest. So this dishonesty exists in the Satya Yuga also. So we should not be enamored of the different ages, the Satya Yuga, the Treta Yuga, the Dwapar Yuga, etc. We should not be enamored of the different ages. We should be interested in not remaining in the material world and not letting anybody else remain in the material world either. That's the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. Take everybody back home. Right? Don't worry about yourself necessarily. So it's important to note that these things happen even, that a man steals somebody else's wife and crazy things happen, right? Like if this happened today in ISKCON, there would be a big controversy around that, right? It would be a big problem for us. It happens also, by the way. It's happened. I've noted some cases. But we have to understand that this is the nature of the material world. Nature of the material world is dirty. Things are very terrible, right? So now, when you look at this purport and the statements of Urvashi, there are two extremes of understanding that we can go to. Okay, we have to understand what those two extremes are so that we don't land up there ourselves. Okay, one extreme, there are certain people who want to paint Srila Prabhupada as a misogynist. You know what a misogynist is? One who hates women. So they want to do that, and they use these kinds of purports and these kinds of translations that Srila Prabhupada is being extremely honest in to paint him as someone who hates women. Right? This is an extreme of understanding, right? He's not a misogynist. Srila Prabhupada is not a chauvinist. Srila Prabhupada is not a misogynist. Srila Prabhupada is none of these ists. Srila Prabhupada is purely transcendental. And therefore, he's speaking the truth as it is without trying to sugarcoat stuff. Okay? Without trying to be politically correct or whatever. He's trying to give it as it is. We have to understand in that spirit. Now, what is the other extreme? The other extreme is that there are men who don't have respect for women, fundamentally, like in their heart, they have some kind of issues, and they will use these kinds of purports and these kinds of verses to say, see, women are completely useless. See, look at this, what Prabhupada is saying. And they will use this to justify this. So in the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, we are a hospital who are trying to become transcendental. We are still on the material platform. We still have male conditioning, female conditioning, different kinds of conditioning, Indian, Western, whatever the conditioning might be. And because we are in that state, we have both extremes within ISKCON. We see them. But we should not be disturbed by these extremes. We have to understand, the spiritual consciousness means as a person who can keep two contradictory things in their head and not be disturbed by those. Right? This is very super important for us to realize that, to understand that there are two extremes, and both the extremes need to somehow or the other coexist and cooperate, because they need to everybody needs to progress in spiritual life, and that cannot happen if we start kicking people out, one extreme or the other extreme, right? So the shoe cannot drop. We need to go with everybody. Ultimately though, both these two extremes come from one basic thing, and that is bodily consciousness. To consider that I am a product of material nature, Srila Prabhupada says in various products. Maya means the understanding that I am a product of this material nature. I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm rich, I'm poor, I'm smart, I'm dumb, whatever that might be, I'm strong, I'm weak. Whatever those designations might be, those designations are the problem for these kinds of extremes. So we should understand that, okay? Now, next thing I made some different points, okay? First of all, let us counter the point that Vedic culture is disrespectful to women. Okay? Let us counter that point. Everybody should understand this very carefully, that Vedic culture is nothing of that sort. Vedic culture is the highest possible culture, and there is no disrespect for any personality, not even an ant, what to speak of a woman. Okay? So, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Dhriti Meda, Smriti, he mentions these different wonderful qualities that everybody is striving to have. Everybody wants to be brave, everybody wants to be strong, everybody wants to be intelligent, everybody wants to, have very good memory, all of these things, correct? So all of these qualities Krishna is mentioning in the female. In other words, the controlling deities of all of these good qualities are actually female. All opulence is actually female in nature, right? This is important to note, right? And everybody is hankering for opulence, right? If you look at, Bhakti Brihad Bhagwat Maharaj says that if you look at the universal administration of Krishna, the Department of Defense is handled by who? Durga Devi. The Department of Education is handled by who? Saraswati Devi. The Department of Finance is handled by who? Lakshmi Devi, right? So would you put an unintelligent person in charge of these important departments? No. So this is another thing. Now, okay, this is a universal administration. Now let us look at bhakti, where we stand, okay? What do we pray? Who do we pray to? Who is the topmost person that we pray to? When we chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, who is Hare? We are calling to Srimati Radharani. She is female, not unintelligent whatsoever, right? Who are the other topmost devotees, like the topmost saints that all of our acharyas aspire to serve?
Gopis.
The gopis, 108 gopis, who are represented by the 108 beads on our japmala, on our chanting beads. They're all great saints. In fact, our great acharyas are all gopis. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is Kamala Gopi. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur is her Manjari. Rupa Goswami is Rupa Manjari. Jiva Goswami signs off some of his words as Jivaka. A female in a male body, he signs off his works like that. So it's actually, that is a basic understanding. Okay? Now the second main, even more fundamental understanding of us as spirit souls from the Bhagavad Gita is, Krishna says, Bhumirapo nalo vayu khammano buddhirevacha ahankara iti yamme bhinna prakriti rashtadha. Okay? Apareyam mitastvanyam viddhi me prakritim param jiva bhutam mahabhaho yayedam dharyate jagat. That verse actually classifies ourselves as apara prakriti. Apara iyam viddhi me prakritim param. So we are the highest Prakriti. Every single living entity, no matter whether it is the body of a dog, whether it is the body of a man, body of a woman, body of any little creature, even a tiny insect, is all of us, spiritually speaking, in the relationship with God, we are all female in nature. We are meant to serve God. We are meant to be enjoyed by God. That is what, when we chant Hare Krishna, Krishna gets a particular flavor from our chanting. So that is our role. It doesn't matter whether we are a body of a man or a woman, we are all female in that respect. Okay, so when we understand that, when we understand these three things, the fact that in Vedic culture, women are the finest opulences, women are hold the finest positions, women hold the finest devotional positions in Krishna's pastimes, right? When we understand that we ourselves are Prakriti, we should understand that there is no space or room for any kind of misogyny in Vedic culture. Okay, this is not there. Now, it talks about this. There is an important underlying theme that is going on here. Okay, so that is marriage. It's a marriage between a handsome man and a beautiful woman. Okay, so what was that marriage based upon? It was based upon sense attraction, sense gratification, right? Urvashi wanted her senses gratified by Pururava, and Pururava wanted his senses gratified by Urvashi. In other words, in their marriage, there was no love. Pururava wanted Urvashi so that she could satisfy his senses. Urvashi wanted Pururava so he could satisfy her senses. So, the fundamental understanding of marriage in Vedic culture is that it must be based on Krishna consciousness. We look at the other factors, like, we make sure that the personalities are, try to make sure that the personalities are matching and different kinds of things are matching, etc., etc. But those things are actually optional. The fundamental thing is Krishna consciousness. If everything else is matching but there is no Krishna consciousness, the marriage will not survive. Because these things are fleeting. In 2 years, the other person's every attractive quality will begin to become the most hateful quality of that person. People who are married can attest to the fact that, my wife was telling me that sometimes you can be breathing too loud.
Blinking.
You're blinking too loud. Right? So this can happen, and this is a fact. But if there is no Krishna consciousness, then the blinking will drive you to divorce. I don't like the way she blinks anymore. I don't buy the way he breathes anymore. The same things that attract a person. A man is strong and a man is decisive and makes decisions and goes in there and does this thing that attracts the woman. Then after marriage, I have many people that I mentor, okay? After marriage, the woman comes and says, he's so stubborn, doesn't listen only. That's what you married him for? And the man comes to me and says, oh, she's so, she's so delicate. That's what you married her for. Because you wanted to be that protector person. And now that delicate nature is a cause of problem for you. But all of these people that I mentor are Krishna conscious people, so they overcome all of these things, right? But the fact is that even if originally the marriage was not based on Krishna consciousness, you have to reset, and your center point has to be Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, no relationship is going to survive, whether it's marriage or brother, sister, doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter. Okay? It is not going to survive. Okay? So, in this verse, there's a very interesting play on words. You see, there's this fox versus fox versus fox versus fox 4 times, right? You look at that. So the first fox is the senses. The second fox is the foxes that will eat the body of a man who had died in the jungle, right? The third fox is the mind of a woman, materialistic woman, and another important thing, and I don't know if you have seen the irony in this verse, is that a person who is supposed to be unintelligent is the person giving wisdom to Pururava. Okay? Please note that Pururava was ready to kill himself. He's finished. He was finished. He was ready to commit suicide. Right? But Urvashi is the person who is saying, don't do this. I will tell you how this whole thing works, by the way, with materialistic women, because I am one. I'm an apsara, right? I'm this, and I'll tell you how this works. Let me enlighten you. Okay? Right, let me teach you how this works in the material world here, okay? So I'm fine, I have many other men actually. So I will be with you for 1 day a year. Okay? That's what you get from now onwards. Right? You can have many other sons in this way. Okay, so it's important to understand that in that verse, that famous verse that Srila Prabhupada has quoted, Striyo Vaishyas Tatha Shudra, so in that particular verse, you have to note that 99% of the population is covered. Not just women. Because how many Brahmanas are there in the world? A Brahmana is Shamo, Damo, Titiksha. How many people are there? Even the fellows born in Brahmin families are Shudras only. Because Janmani Jayate Shudra, Samskarat Bhavet Vijaha, Veda Phatat Bhavet Vipro, Brahma Janati the Brahmana. A person who has Brahman realization is a Brahmana. Who has Brahman realization? In the world. The Brahmanas have Brahman realization? They don't. So all the 99.9% of the whole population is covered in that Striyo Vaishyas Tatha Shudras Tepi Yantis Param Gatim. The Bhagavad Gita was meant for less intelligent people, and we cannot even understand the Bhagavad Gita. What does that make us? Right? How many years does it take us to understand the Bhagavad Gita? Right? So we have to understand that. Who is less intelligent? Less intelligent is a person who thinks that they are the body. It doesn't matter if you're... So, many times I have heard spiritual masters saying that in the modern world, the biggest problem is, men behaving like women. Being very petty and being very not strong, basically. Right? And of course, there's an opposite problem also where women are trying to, go out of that, their natural roles. Right? But a fundamental problem is sense control. Now, another, I want you to bring up this verse, Prabhu, from the purport of the 60th verse of chapter 260, Bhagavad Gita. Okay? So, in this particular verse, okay, Yamunacharya Alavandar, the guru of Ramanujacharya, one of the greatest acharyas, is saying this verse. He's saying, Yadavadi Mamma Chitta Padaravinde, Krishna Chitta Padaravinde, Navanava Rasat Dhamani Rantumasit, Tadavadi Nari Sangame Smaryamane Bhavati Mukha Vikarha Shushtu Nishtivanamcha. That's what he's saying there in that verse. So, an immature person reading that verse is going to read that as spitting at a woman. No, he's spitting at his thought of sex life with a woman. That's what he's spitting at. Right? So that's important to understand. Yamunacharya, none of our acharyas are haters of any particular class of people or animals or whatever it is. They are lovers of everybody, because that is the fundamental defining feature of a Vaishnava. Paradukha Dukhi. They are Suhridam Sarvabhuta. They are Suhridam of everybody. They are the best friend of everybody. They are not like that. So he's spitting not at the thought of a woman, he's spitting at his idea of sex pleasure with a woman. Because Yamunacharya, the history was, Yamunacharya Alavandar, when he was a teenager, a young boy actually, he defeated a very great Pandit in a debate, who was it's a long story, I won't get into the story right now, but we can talk about it at some other time. And as a reward, he got 50% of that king's kingdom. So from being a very poor Brahman boy, he became the king of half of this South India. And as a king, you get there's a lot of facilities for sense gratification. There were people lined up to give you sense gratification because you're a powerful person. After that, Yamunacharya gave it up and became a sadhu. But at that time, he remembered his life. All of us, whoever before devotional service, we may have done things that we sometimes remember that. And the mature devotee spits at the thought of sense gratification. The immature devotee falls into it and has nostalgia for, goes back to your materialistic friends and goes back to your materialistic ideas and thoughts and this kind of stuff. Okay, so this is important. I have just two more points to make and then I will pause for your questions. Srila Prabhupada is mentioning the verse, in the purport, he's mentioning this instruction by Prahlad Maharaj, one of the Mahajans. And remember that this Tat sadhu manne asuravarya dehinam sada samudvigna dhyam asatgrahat hitvatmaghatam. We should go back to that. Hitvatmaghatam grahamanda kupam varam raje varam gatoyad harimashrayeta. So that's from the Srimad Bhagavatam 755. The advice was given by Prahlad Maharaj to who? To his father, Hiranyakashipu, because he was a Grihamedhi. So Srila Prabhupada is saying, giving the difference between Grihastha and Grihamedhi. So Krishna crosses grihasthas must be careful of this life of woman. In other words, actually, if you are a strong grihastha, there will be unscrupulous women who are attracted to you. This will happen. It's a natural thing. Women are attracted, but you have to be careful of such persons. Even if that woman may happen to be once upon a time your wife. Sometimes it happens that you get attracted by such a person, you get married to that person. But the same thing applies to a woman also. You have to be very careful of a materialistic man when you are in Krishna consciousness. Try not to get involved with them. Materialistic people cannot be trusted, right? So, ultimately speaking, Srila Prabhupada is saying all of these things with a view of trying to protect someone who is the target of exploitation in our modern world, right? So relationships happen in the modern world. Who suffers the pain from the relationship broken afterwards more? It's not the man. It's actually the woman. She's saddled with a whole bunch of responsibilities. She's saddled with a whole bunch of unnecessary burdens. And even when you're talking about the degradation of the body, the woman's health is what suffers in the whole process of enjoying illicit relationships, etc. She's the one taking all the medication. She's the one going through all the surgical procedures. She's the one doing all of these things. So Srila Prabhupada is saying all of these things with a view to carefully help everybody understand the mind of a materialistic person, whether it's a man or a woman, right? So, okay, so I will stop there and just do a quick recap. Okay, so in this verse we covered 10 points. Okay, in this whole thing. Okay, first of all, we looked at the two extremes of understanding. Where somebody tries to prove Srila Prabhupada is a misogynist, somebody else tried to prove, using Srila Prabhupada's statements, try to prove that women are inferior. But materially infected people, whether man or woman, is the same. And spiritually advanced person, man or woman, again same, equal, right? Still, we have to be careful, right, which I mentioned in the last point. Right, bodily consciousness is a problem. We talked about how there is no lack of respect for any class of person in Vedic culture, right? We talked about that. We looked at how we are all actually female as Prakriti, right? So therefore, it makes no sense. How I just digress for a moment, how a man is born as a woman and how a man is born as a woman is born as a man, how that happens. We've all been women, we've all been men, right, in different lifetimes. How it happens is at the moment of death, we think of somebody of the opposite sex. Yam yam vapiswaran bhavam tajatyante kalivaram tam tumemaite konteya sada tad bhava bhavitah. Then the woman becomes a man. And the same thing happens to the man. Yam yam vapiswaran bhavam, he's thinking of a woman, he becomes a woman. So man becomes a woman becomes a man. Man becomes a woman becomes a man. And this continues ad nauseam, continuously. So we have all had a chance to experience both sides of the equation. Nothing left for us to experience anymore except pure devotion. Right? So this is important. So marriage must be based on Krishna consciousness. Anything based on sense gratification is... And we talked about the fox versus fox versus fox versus fox in this verse. So you can see the poetry in the Bhagavatam. Even we looked at the irony of this verse, where the supposedly less intelligent person is explaining supposedly the more. So you can see that the verse itself is saying, that it's very relative. Both of them are materially placed. So one is intelligent, one is unintelligence. We looked at who is less intelligence. Anybody who think that they are this body. We looked at Yamunacharya's famous verse, which is quoted in 260 by Srila Prabhupada, which is again used by crazy people to make the point that Yamunacharya also was, they thought that women were worth spitting on, right? This is crazy nonsense. So we looked at that. We looked at the difference between Grihastha and Grahamedi. Somebody who is focused on sense gratification is a Grahamedi. Somebody who is focused on living in the home for Krishna consciousness as a Grihastha. And to be careful of Grahamedis, whether they are male or female. Right? And then we looked at why Srila Prabhupada is mentioning these words, because it's very easy for a man to manipulate a woman. Anybody who gives a woman some attention, the woman gets attracted to that person because she's looking for validation. That's her conditioning, right? And the man knows how to, there are whole courses out there on how to exploit women. You can pay, men can pay money and go and learn how to do this, and then they go and practice in the bars. It happens regularly. And meanwhile, the woman thinks, oh, she's giving me so much attention. Meanwhile, he has just taken a course to do that, right? To make that happen. Now, when I was a new fresh engineer in Germany, my German colleagues, would go hunting on Friday nights and Saturday nights, and then they would come and brag about their exploits. There was a 35-year-old man who would talk about their experience with a 16-year-old girl. I'm like, this is perverted. Like, what are you people doing? But this is what they are taught in Western culture, and we are all unfortunately being impacted by that culture, not seeing women in the right mode of respect. It's very important. Okay, so I'll stop there. Questions, comments, concerns, thoughts. It's a sensitive topic.
Oh, I really like what you said, that being spiritually advanced is to see two contradictory things without getting disturbed.
My spiritual master told me that when I was, I still ask him a lot of questions, and he constantly tells me that MAHABHAGWAT, a Brahmana is a person who can hold two contradictory viewpoints in their mind and remain undisturbed.
So you go to 60 in Nazari's quote. So he splits his desire for sex desire. But Lord Krishna says,
But because Yamunacharya's previous lifetime in the palace with a harem full of girls was not dharma aviruddha, it was dharma viruddha. Huh? So therefore, he was not spitting at his chaste desire to have a Krishna conscious child, for example. He's spitting at his desire to enjoy a woman's body. Make sense? So,
Hare Krishna. Thank you very, very much for the balanced approach on the sensitive subject. I'm wondering what you would suggest men can do in the society of devotees to help and counteract unhealthy views and attitudes and behaviors.
I think first of all we have to work on kicking those out of our own hearts. It takes a long time, to do that. It takes a long time. So once upon a time, many years ago in ISKCON's history, Tamal Krishna Maharaj was in charge of a particular ashram, and he saw that the others saw that there was some improper mixing between the brahmacharis and the brahmacharinis happening in the ashram. And one person suggested that they should separate the ashrams, like have separate buildings or take them far apart. And then Tamal Krishna Maharaj said an interesting thing. He said, "Oh please, who will the brahmacharis perform for?" In other words, like the flamboyance, like the desire to be funny, the desire to be, the center of attraction. My Guru Mata says this often, is actually a hidden sex desire. This desire to stand out and be, whether it's a man or a woman, it's that. So it's a great exercise for ourselves to not kind of put ourselves in that position where we are unnecessarily hogging the limelight, right? Where some of us have that tendency, and we should really watch and guard for that tendency and say, this is my sex desire speaking right now. And that's one important thing, because all the other things like the extreme reaction to man or woman or whatever that might be, comes from frustration of that sex desire. So because I might be in a situation where I'm already married or whatever, but I have all this sex desire, and then I cannot express it, I'm encouraging it by being flamboyant and by being the center of attention and things like that, but I cannot fulfill it. So therefore, I react to it with, another folk story, the grapes are sour story. Right? So all of these are unhealthy manifestations that come out from repressed or suppressed sex desire. Instead of which, Srila Prabhupada says that we should learn to sublimate that sex desire in Krishna consciousness. Right? Like work, put that energy into Krishna, deeply into Krishna, and not have any energy left over. Another devotee asked me, how do we control these kinds of urges, etc. And I had asked that question before, and the answer that I was given is, you have excess energy, which is why you're feeling all of these things. So in other words, you're accumulating too much, you're eating too much, you're collecting too much, you're essentially sleeping too much, like all of these different kinds of things. So if you have all of this excess energy, either you reduce your intake or you increase your output, right? So you should not have any energy left over by the end of the day, because that causes problems. It grows on us. Srila Prabhupada mentions in different ways that just as giving milk to a payapanam bhujanganam kevalam vishavardhanam, Srila Prabhupada says that you give milk to a serpent, his poison increases. So if my hearts are full of crazy desires and I give milk to those desires, basically that poison increases. So watch out, what is it that I'm feeding, that sort of stuff. But ultimately, I think each of us can only really work on ourselves. And if we can work on ourselves, then somebody else might be inspired to emulate us. Like I can't go out there and change the whole of ISKCON and saying, you, don't do this kind of stuff. It doesn't work, because it's a multi-authority society. There are very respected individuals who have certain viewpoints. And they might be on the transcendental platform, but their followers may not be. So there are many spiritual masters who have specific viewpoints. They are on the transcendental platform and they are doing this in the way that Srila Prabhupada is doing it, but their immature followers may not be in the same. But we cannot change that overnight. Like we can just cultivate those, because if we drive that wedge too hard, if we go the other extreme, for example, then there might be split, and then our cooperation to work with each other is lost. So we agree to disagree where we need to, and we continue working together to push forward Krishna consciousness, and ultimately all of us will be healed. That's the hope. Make sense? Thank you. Is there anything else? Yes, Prabhu.
I just had a question in my mind. You said that people suppress their sex desires. So as we are conditioned to have this sex desire, so we need to, if we don't suppress it, we are expressing it. If we are not expressing it, we are suppressing it.
No, neither are we expressing it nor are we suppressing it. We are sublimating it. It's like I may have a lot of money, for example, and that money will become like a poison on my mind, like I'll become proud of my money or whatever. Or I can give it away to Krishna and remain unpoisoned by that money, right? Similarly, my knowledge, for example, like Srila Prabhupada says that if I acquire a lot of knowledge but I don't share it, then that knowledge becomes poisonous in my head. It becomes like a stagnant water. People who are constantly on the internet responding to controversies with very erudite, deeply thought out, but scathing, heavy remarks. It's because that knowledge is not properly sublimated. So if I have no knowledge, then let me go test it out and try to distribute 3 books today. Let me try to convince 3 people to take a book instead of going on the internet and fighting somebody. Right? So that's like, I have the knowledge, but I need to sublimate it in Krishna's service. Instead of otherwise it becomes poisonous. So yes, we have that desire. Yes, we have that heart, but we need to use that. So that's why a spiritual master helps us with these kinds of things. And spiritual master is very careful to point out certain things. And that's the role of the guru actually. The guru is not to just flatter you and pat you on the back, but actually give you a kick on the butt sometimes. Right? And say, this is where you're going, by the way. This is a slippery slope. This is where this is leading to, by the way. And this is where it's coming from. And if we are intelligent enough, then we will take that. And the guru will give us more of that, what we need in order to become purified. But otherwise, if we are very weak in our faith and all that, then the guru will only be patting us on the back because they are worried that we will stop chanting if they give us some heavy instruction, for example. Right? Many gurus, there's no such guru who is lenient or strict or whatever, right? They behave differently according to the disciple. Make sense? So you have to sublimate it, and you have to find out how to sublimate it by speaking to seniors who have done it or who are doing it, for example. But it's very difficult, I agree with you. It's very difficult. It's not easy at all. Because the world we live in is a very dangerous place, where everywhere this is encouraged. And I know one devotee in India, for example. He's a young man, looking to get married, and his relatives and family members, because of his nature where he has sublimated everything in Krishna consciousness and he has no drive for certain materialistic things, actually think that he's impotent. And he's facing tremendous pressure from his family because they think that not doing these kinds of things means that he's not a quote unquote a man. And he just wants to have a Krishna conscious marriage. He doesn't want to get involved with these. India is rampant with this crazy stuff right now. He doesn't want it. And his friends, his family members, those who are not Krishna conscious, think that something is wrong with you. And then such a person, if he's not weak in his faith, he's very strong with his faith, but if he's weak in his faith, then he will actually go and express it just to get these people off his back. But he won't do it. He's a very strong devotee. So you see big book distributors, big preachers, like these people, they have just figured out a way to sublimate that desire into Krishna service. Productive devotees, people who write, like you see Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, Radhesham Prabhu, look at their output on a daily basis. Right? That means they have taken all their energy and put it into Krishna. Or 99.9% of it anyways. Okay? So it's time now, it's 8:35, but if anybody has anything else, especially... You have a question, Prabhu?
Well, some of your main topics was about...
Hey, good to see you, Vikram, after a long time. Hare Krishna.
Some of your main topics was about male and female, right?
Yeah.
And male and female. And the soul or the living that lives in these bodies.
Yes.
Are they have any gender?
Yes. The body has an agenda.
No, talk about the soul.
The soul doesn't have an agenda. The soul is under the control of forces that have an agenda. And gender or agenda? Gender. Okay. Sorry. Oh, got it. Okay. I misunderstood. Please, yes. And
I want to know if the soul have that. That was in the personality.
the soul identifies with it. Prakriti kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha ahankara vimudhatma kartahamati manyate. So all the activities that are happening around us are like the matrix, they're being conducted by the three modes of material nature. And somehow or the other, we attach ourselves to a particular set of modes of nature. So, but we can only unattach ourselves from those modes of material nature if we are attached to Krishna, who is the master of those three modes. Mama maya duratyaya mameva yah prapadyante maya metam tarantite. So we cannot overcome our attachment to the modes of material nature unless we are attached, surrendered to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. So that's the goal of devotional service, is for us to transfer that surrender to Krishna. And that's the goal for you. Welcome back. So happy to see you. Hare Krishna. Anybody else? We can stop. Vancha kalpatarubhyasya kripa sindhubhyasya patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo.